Yee! Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Tiffany and I'm excited to bring you a whole new set of patterns, and these are specifically for hi-hats. And these will be hat patterns 1 through 4. But don't worry, I'll be coming out with more hat patterns in the future. So let's begin. And what you'll need for making any of these hat patterns are going to be 4mm EVA foam, Sharpies, a cutting mat, a heat gun, X-Acto knife, contact cement glue, and of course your respirator to protect your lungs. And I'll have links to everything in the description. As well as you can get each of these patterns individually on my website, TiffanyGordonCosplay.com, or you can save some money and get the 4-pack. Now, let's start with our first pattern, which is going to be the baseball hat. And after you have printed out the pattern and taped it all together, you will want to trace each pieces onto 4mm EVA foam. And this is going to be parts A through H. As well as, don't forget to label each of these pieces and put a little tick where it shows the ticks indicated. Then you're going to want to grab that heat gun, and we're going to actually heat treat the foam before cutting it out with an X-Acto knife. Reason being is this is just going to make all of your cuts going forward a lot cleaner, and it's going to shrink the pores of the foam and make it so you have better attachments with your glue and painting later on. And there's an optional part on the backside, the little cap strap, which in reality would be a plastic piece that has a part behind it that would connect into it so you could change the size of your hat. And what you'll want to do is just punch some holes out of it. I use Costal's hole drill, but you can also use a soldering wand or just cut this out with an X-Acto knife. And here's what all of the pieces should look like for this pattern. Now grab that respirator, and we're going to be using contact cement glue for all of our attachment purposes. And you're going to want to apply this glue onto all of the label edges and wait for it to fully dry before we start attaching. And I will note on parts C, D, E, and F, you will need to apply a little bit of glue onto the very bottom part where it is indicated, and this is so we can attach the bill of the hat to that location. Now to assemble! And because all of our glue is now fully dry, we can start attaching. And I started off with connecting D to E, and I'm going to be starting at the bottom and using the table, pushing the 2 pieces together, slowly working my way towards the tip. And repeating the same type of method, I did this for F to G, as well as B to C. And then connect each of those 3 connected parts together to make one. So connecting C to D, and then onto the other side, connecting E to F. And for the back part, connecting B to G, this will be a little bit more tricky, but you will want to start more at the tip and push the pieces together going down. And you may have to work it back and forth to fully connect it. Then grab H and connect that strap to the back where it's indicated onto B and G. And for the last piece, the bill, which is marked A, you will want to connect it to the front, starting in the center onto D and E and slowly going to either side, which is C and F, to complete our hat pattern number 1, which is the baseball hat. For hat pattern number 2, which is our garden hat. And you're going to want to trace each of the pattern pieces, which are A through F, onto your 4mm EVA foam. As well as, don't forget to label each of the places. And we're going to grab that heat gun and heat treat all of the foam before we grab our X-Acto knife and cutting mat to cut out each of the pieces. And here's what it should look like once all parts are cut out. And once again, that respirator you're going to want to wear when we start working with our contact cement glue. And you're going to want to apply this glue onto all of the labeled edges, as well as the indicated location onto the top part of A and B onto the inner part of the circle. And you'll want to wait for this glue to fully dry before we start attaching each of the pieces. We're going to be starting from the top part part of the hat, the dome kind of part. And this is going to be parts E and F, and we're going to connect them together starting from one side and using our table to push the two pieces together, working our way down to the other side. Next, you're going to grab part D, and we're going to start in the center, our little tack together, and then we're going to slowly work our way from one side to the other, and finally attaching it to itself in the back. Little helpful tip, I like to flip this whole piece upside down, so that way I can make sure that it is curving with the natural way the foam wants to go. Then the last part of the dome, and this is going to be part C, and we're going to be repeating it the same way we just did for the last piece, connecting it in the center onto D and working our way around to either side and closing it by connecting to itself from C to C. Then put that to the side, and we're going to grab parts A and B, and we're going to be attaching them together. And all that's left is to attach our dome to the top part of our now connected A and B spot. I do this by having my finger on the underside to help guide where the pieces align. And once that's done, hat pattern number 2, which is our garden hat, will be complete. For hat number 3, which is the pirate hat. And just like our other patterns, you're going to want to trace all of the parts, which are A through H, onto 4mm EVA foam. As well as there are some indicated parts on this hat, specifically part H, that have it labeled score, and there is a line. I highly recommend cutting off those sections so that way you can easily know where to draw that line for reference in a bit. As well as, don't forget to label all of the parts. Then grab your heat gun to heat treat all of the foam, followed by cutting out the parts using an X-Acto knife. Next, grab the letter H, and on all of those spots that have the line that we labeled score, we're going to be grabbing a really sharp X-Acto knife, so preferably a new blade, and you're going to actually be following this line as a guideline, cutting it at a 45-degree angle, only piercing halfway through the foam, going down that line. Then you're going to rotate the foam 180, and you're going to again follow down that exact same line. This is going to create a triangle-like channel that you will then be able to remove, and this is what is going to help that foam bend into the correct shape that we want in the end. And here's what all of the pieces should look like once they are cut out. Now for gluing, and once again, we're going to be using our contact cement glue as well as a respirator for safety. And you're going to be applying this contact cement glue to all of the labeled edges. As well as specifically for part H, you will want to add your glue onto all of the spots that we scored and removed that foam. That way it will bend and stay in that correct spot. As well as applying your contact cement glue around the top part of the inner ring on H. And once that glue is fully dry, we can then start to assemble. Starting with the top part of the dome of the hat, this is going to be A, and we're going to then grab parts B as well as part E. And starting with B, we're going to connect on one side, working our way to the other. And then we're going to repeat this with part E, connecting from one side all the way to the other, as well as attaching B to E at the ends. Little helpful tip is to use the table and have all of your pieces pressed into the table when you align them together. This is going to help ensure that your seams align correctly and they aren't wobbly. Then grab part C, and we're going to connect it to the bottom of part B, working our way around, as well as we're going to grab our next piece, which is F, connecting at the bottom of E and working all the way around again, and then the last two parts of C and F connecting those two together. And then the last two sections of this dome. Again, we're going to grab D, starting from the bottom, working our way around, attaching to C, and repeating this for G, working from the bottom, attaching all the way around to part F, and then attaching D and G together to finish out the dome. And I will note that I ended up flipping the whole piece around, so all the labeled sections were facing outward. Then grab part H, and we're going to be attaching the part to itself first at the bottom, so it should look like this. And before attaching the rest of the pieces and bending it to shape, I would recommend attaching the dome part on top of it first. For a helpful tip on this, I put my hand inside to help guide where the foam will align together onto the edge. And once that is fully done, then you can connect the 3 labeled tip points of H together, as well as you can bend where it said score to the correct shape of our pirate hat to finish hat pattern number 3. For the last hat pattern of this set, and that is pattern number 4, the cowboy hat. And I will note that this one has a little bit of tricky curves, but it will look amazing once you finish it. And you're going to, again, print out all of the parts, tape them together, and then we're going to trace them onto our 4mm EVA foam. And this is going to be parts A through G. As well as don't forget to label each of the parts, and there are a few spots on this pattern that are indicated with score, specifically parts A, C, E, and G, and you will want to trace where that line is for later. Then remove all of the powder paper and we're going to heat treat the foam with a heat gun, followed by grabbing our X-Acto knife and cutting each of the parts out. Now, all of those spots that were indicated with score, as well as we had drawn that line on, you will want to grab your X-Acto knife again with a really sharp blade, so preferably just grab a new blade, and we're going to be cutting along that line as a guideline at a 45-degree angle in one direction, piercing only halfway through the foam, and then you're going to rotate it 180 degrees and cut at the same 45-degree angle, following that line again. This is going to leave a triangle-like channel that you will then be able to remove that foam, and you'll be able to bend that piece into the correct shape that we want our hat to be. Now, once all that is done, we can then start applying our glue. And we're going to be applying that contact cement glue onto all of our labeled edges, as well as all of the spots that were labeled score. You're going to want to put a bit of contact cement glue in that, and then on top of part G, you will want to apply your contact cement glue around the inner circle part. Then once the glue is dry, we can start to assemble, and we're going to be starting at the top part of our hat, working our way down. So this is going to be parts A connecting to part B, starting from the top and working around towards the bottom. And the foam should naturally want to bend inward, which is why we had scored it. And that part then you can push together and it should attach because we applied our contact cement glue there. Then put it to the side and we're going to grab parts D and C and we're going to attach them together, starting from one side and working our way to the other point, followed by where our labeled section of score was for part C. You can then bend that. And we're going to repeat this for E and F next. Then we can connect all of these pieces together, starting at the bottom where D is, connecting to B, which should lead to our part of C that connects to B, going upward, and then connecting again back to D. And you're going to repeat this for E and F, as well as closing it off, connecting the bottom and the top part of D and F together. Now, this can be a bit tricky depending on how much contact cement glue you applied. And I highly recommend for the parts that don't fully attach, go and grab a little bit more contact cement glue and put it into that part, wait for the glue to dry, and then you can come back and push it together, and this should be a final connection part to ensure all of the pieces fully connect to their lines. Then put that to the side and we're going to grab part G and we're going to connect it to itself at the bottom first, and then we're going to connect the top part of the dome onto it. And again, use your fingers on the inside to help guide where they align together around the center. And our final step is going to be bending part G, where those two score lines are, into the shape to finish out our hat pattern number 4, the cowboy hat. And that, guys, is all 4 of these hat patterns. Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments, as well as what other type of hat patterns should I make to help you with your next cosplay. A big thank you to all of my company sponsors here on YouTube, as well as all of those members who support me, specifically those legendary members, so I can continue doing this as my full-time job and continue bringing you more cosplay tutorials. And I'll see you for our next tutorial, so make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of my cosplay tutorials. And I'll see you next time!